Hi everybody. In this video we're going to go over how to construct a frequency distribution like we have pictured here for the Macintosh auto sales group. So this frequency distribution comes from our data that we have here in our Excel spreadsheet. So we want to create a frequency distribution for the profits. So if you'll follow along in the notes, the first thing we want to do is determine the number of classes that we want. So that's what we're going to do in step 1. Now, as in the notes, we normally want to pick between 5 and 20 classes. In this case, we're going to pick 8 classes to use. Then the next step we want to do is to determine the class width. Now the class width is going to be the high score minus the low score divided by the desired number of classes. So if you go back to our data set, we're going to have to pick out the high and low score from our profit column, and so it helps to sort the data to do that. So we're going to put some filters here in our header row so that we can easily sort it. So highlight those like we did before, and we'll put some filters in there. And then we'll sort along the profit column from low to high. Alright, so we see that our lowest profit was 282, and if we scroll down, our largest profit was $4,988. So our class width is then going to be 4,988 minus 282 divided by the number of classes we want, which in this case is 8. And so that's what our class width is going to be. Now, if you read through the notes, what we normally want to do is round this to a convenient number. So we're going to round this to 600, and so that's going to be our class width. So we have now done step 2 here. We've determined our class width, and it is going to be 600. The next thing we want to do is construct our class intervals. So we want to pick our first lowest class, our first lower class limit. So we have to look back at our data set, and we see that the smallest profit was $282. So we're going to choose a convenient number that's smaller than that number, and so we'll pick 200. So we'll create a column here with our lower limits and our upper limits. So let's do our lower limits here, and we'll start out with 200. Now our class width, we've already determined that we want that to be 600, rounding this to a convenient number. Notice you could also round this to 500 if you like. There's nothing set in stone about how to round it, but you could pick 500. We're going to pick 600 in this case. So if our first lower limit is 200, then our next lower limit is going to be 200 plus 600, or 800. And so on. We just keep adding 600 going down. Now what we can do is Excel, we can highlight these two and then grab the little fill handle and drag down, and that'll increment by units of 600. So there are all of our lower limits. Notice the difference between each of these. 800 minus 200 is 600. 1400 minus 800 is 600, and so on. Now our upper limits, now we have to pick our first upper limit so that no data falls between the upper limit and 800. Now all of our data is reported in whole numbers, so we can put 799 right there. If our data had decimal values like 282.2, then we would want this to be 799.9 right here, so that no data could fall between an upper limit and the next lower limit. Then we just have to add 600 to this one, to the 799, so we're going to get 1399 for our next one, or we can just see we go 1400 minus 1 to get 1399. And now we can just continue this pattern by highlighting both of these cells and then using the fill handle to drag down, and Excel automatically increments by units of 600. So there we go. We have our classes now. Now we're going to make this pretty here, so we're going to do our classes like this, and watch what I'm going to do. So what we're going to put right here is going to be H2. I'm going to use the and symbol, quotation mark dash quotation mark, and then what's in cell I2. And you see, by using the and symbol, it's going to treat what's in cell H2 and I2 as text. And when I hit enter now, you see it gives me 200-799. So that's a nice way to write that first class. And then we can just drag this down, this formula downward. And there are all of our classes written nicely like that. And we can adjust the width there of our column. All right, now we want to construct our frequencies. So we're going to put our frequencies right here. Now comes the a little bit of a tricky part here. You have to follow along very carefully. So I want to count how many data values fall between 200 and 799 from our profits over here. Now we're going to have Excel do that automatically for us. So follow along very carefully with what I do. I'm going to highlight all of these cells right here. I'm going to go up, click on the little f of x to insert a function. Now I'm going to insert a frequency table. Now if you don't see the word frequency listed right here, it is under statistical. So if you click on this little down arrow right here and go to statistical and then go down to frequency right there and then click OK. Alright, now it's asking us for some information. It wants the data array, so that's where all the data is located that Excel is going to count for us. So you can just click on this little arrow right here, or you don't need to. You can just highlight the data here like this. Just highlight all of your data. There we go. Now it's asking for the bin array, so put the cursor in the bin array and scroll up, and this is what we're going to highlight for the bin array. We're going to highlight the upper class limits. That's what you want. Now do not click OK at this point. Let me show you what to do. You're going to have to click on the Control button, hold it down, click on the Shift button, hold it down, and then hit the Enter button. And there you go. All of our frequencies are entered. So once again, you had to hit Control, Shift, Enter. And you hold those keys down as you're pressing them. And then you input the frequencies. If you don't hold down those buttons, or you just click that OK button, you would only get like the first number up here, and you wouldn't get all of the other numbers down here, and you'd have to start the whole process over again. So there you go. There we have our frequencies. We can center that column right there. And while we're at it, why don't we also create a relative frequency table? So we're just going to add a column right here for our relative frequencies. Now our relative frequencies, we're going to have to add these up here. Let's see, we should have 200. Let's just make sure of that. So if I sum these up, let's put a little total down here. And let's sum these up. Okay, so there's 200. Now for the relative frequencies, we have to put in here 20 is what percent of 200? Well, obviously that's going to be 10, but we're going to have Excel do that for us automatically. So we're going to go equals what's in cell K2 divided by the total, which is in cell K10. And we're going to use dollar signs so that when we copy this down, the K10 reference doesn't change. And then we multiply that by 100. And there's our relative frequency, 10. And then we just, that represents a percent. And then we just drag that down. And we can center that if we want. And there you go, we have our relative frequencies, and we can sum these up. We should get 100. And there you go. So there is our relative frequency table. So all of this right here is our frequency table right here. We have a frequency and relative frequency table. We don't really need these. We just used these two columns to create our class column right here. And there you go. That's how we construct a frequency table and a relative frequency table. Now let me just show you one other thing here. If you actually wanted the percents to appear in here, you would have to format these cells as percents. So to do that, what you could do is highlight all of these cells like this, right click, go down to Format Cells, and then click on percentage and how many decimal places you want to display. Let's just say we'll display 1 decimal place. Actually, we didn't need that because everything's exact here. Now you see what happened is the 10% became 1000%. Well, that's because when you format the cells as percents, you don't need to multiply by 100. So just get rid of that 100 there. And then drag that down again. And there you go. Now you see the nice percent symbols there. This one we forgot to format as a percent. So if I went and formatted that as a percent, there you go. So everything did sum up to 100% here. And you see, just for example, we had 12% of all the profits were between $800 and $1,399. And that's how you read all of these relative frequencies right here. And so there you go. That's how you can construct a frequency and relative frequency table.